Hello, welcome to the Divorce Couch, where we would like to talk about our experiences and what we have learned as coaches and in talk with our clients. And today we would like to talk about the importance of knowing how to choose your solicitor. With me are...
Hi, I'm Claire and I'm a divorce coach living in Northern Ireland.
I'm Salma and I'm a divorce coach in London.
And I think I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Simone and I'm the divorce coach in Germany. We all had our own individual experiences in terms of divorce and the legal aspects of the separation of a marriage. So we would like to talk about why choosing the right solicitor makes such a difference to your divorce experience if you are working with a solicitor, because we are talking from different like country backgrounds. Like, I think in the common law, I remember when I was in Singapore, I not necessarily needed a lawyer to go through the divorce process, where in Germany, it is a must. You have to have some sort of legal representation. So who would like to begin? I have a couple of questions. Maybe grab a pen and a piece of paper. Is a lot, I think, that is really worth noting and dotting, because we would like to give you some really practical advice, for example, what to ask the solicitor before you make a choice and what type of divorce you are going to choose for yourself. Okay, let's hit it. Question number one, when do you need to speak to a solicitor? What was your experience there?
I think that, sorry, go ahead, Claire.
I was going to say, I'm happy to start with that one, because I actually went to a solicitor before I actually left my ex-husband. And my reason for doing that was because when I got to a point when I thought this isn't working, I didn't know what I needed and I didn't know how to go forward, and I didn't know how long the process was, and I didn't know what I needed to find out. So for me, because of my circumstances, my contact in contacting a lawyer and talking to a lawyer solicitor was fact-finding at the very beginning, having made a decision. And I think I'm very aware that everybody's divorce story is different, because we all come to a divorce pathway by different reasons. So my reason was I was making a decision and I needed to have as much information as I could. And that was how I came to my first solicitor. Was yours the same, ladies, or was yours a bit different?
Mine was a little bit different. I think I was quite lucky in the sense that I had a few people in my inner circle that were practicing family law. So I was able to get the basic information from them, although they weren't representing me. But, through conversations, I was able to get the sort of details that I needed. But I think what's really important here is to absolutely speak to a solicitor in the first instance, or somebody that has that knowledge in a professional capacity. And I think that what I'm trying to say is not family and friends as per se, because everybody will have an opinion about other people that have divorced and what they got and what happened to them. And it's all based on completely different circumstances to your own. So whether you choose to go with a solicitor going forward, because not all circumstances will necessarily require it, because in the UK at least, you can carry out a large proportion of the divorce process online now. There are certain stages at which it is recommended that you have things written up by a solicitor, but there are the avenues where you could potentially carry it out on your own. But I think it's about, most solicitors will offer a free sort of consultation meeting. And I think what's important is to get that advice early on, so that based on your circumstances and based on how complicated your divorce is going to be. Like in my example, it was, we, in terms of assets, there wasn't that much to split. We were literally, the only asset we had was our family home. There wasn't a huge amount of any other assets to really discuss. So initially I felt that, okay, maybe I don't need a solicitor. However, a year in to going into, you know, applying online for my decree nisi, and then getting no response from my ex-husband, who felt that he was just not going to respond. It's the actual, when I did finally instruct a solicitor, it was really to offload part of the emotional stress of staying on top of the paperwork.
Can I jump in here? Because I know that you have done so much yourself, and you have already a vocabulary at hand that maybe for some of our viewers, they don't. And I would like to bring in a third experience, which was mine. I was totally overwhelmed. We had decided we would split. So out of us three, I'm the one, I feel, who hasn't really emotionally and mentally been prepared enough going in. It was just a split, and all of a sudden things just happened to me. It was just unraveling, and I had no idea. I didn't even know what a divorce process would look like. You know, what the whole vocabulary, if you talk about a divorce, what's it called? Decree nisi. That to me still, yeah. And there are so many steps along the way that I think I would recommend. So if the split is happening, you know by now that I'm a huge fan of Google. You know what? There is so much online. You know what? Just key in what is the normal process of a divorce. Yeah. You know what is the divorce about? What is there to be split? Yeah. Just to get some terminology to be familiar with. And I'm not saying that it's kind of like when you have a medical diagnosis, don't go and, you know what, become the doctor, but make yourself familiar with terminology and the process, because the processes are different in England, where they have now changed with the no fault divorce. All that is so important to know what is happening to you. And I think when you then approach the lawyer, I think very important is what Claire just said, is you are emotionally ready. You basically now are asking for the more factual input from your support team or from your support member. And then at least you know what you were talking about. You know what? I went immediately, and just like you had all these friends who said, oh, go to this lawyer, go to that lawyer. And lawyers have different attitudes towards divorce. Not everybody wants to have a win-win separation. Some are really, I feel, instrumentalizing you as a client. And I walked in and I was so overwhelmed. And then he said, oh God, I feel so sorry for women like you. And you know what? That just really threw me off. Threw me off. How dare you? You know what? And I just wasn't, and we come to this maybe later, I did not feel he would lift me onto a eye-to-eye client. I just felt so small, and I already felt small because of the split and the separation and the not knowing, being in a foreign environment. So yes, the first thing I would, or the thing that I am adding on is make yourself aware of what a process is. You know what, you will be confronted, and lawyers very often don't explain certain things. You'll be confronted with terminology and you have no clue, Hossa, what that is. So yeah, I find that important.
And I think it's important to understand that, you know, if you are planning to, sorry, let me just silence my phone. If you are planning to, engage with a solicitor, you do need to speak to 2 or 3 different solicitors. The same way as if you were putting your house on the market, you would speak to 2 or 3 different estate agents. You would see which one do you connect with, which one specializes in the specific areas around your divorce. So, you know, family law solicitors have different specialisms. You know, if there's an aspect of DV involved, if there's an aspect of, you know, high net situation. So all of these things, different solicitors will have different sort of experiences and specialisms. So it's really important to do your research and look for a solicitor or solicitors that you are going to interview almost, because, you know, they are working on your behalf. So you want to make sure that you're working with somebody that you connect with, you can speak to, you can be honest and open with, because that relationship will become quite intense and personal over the course of the time that you're working together. So it's really important that you have a solicitor that, one, you feel heard, you feel listened to, and remember, the terminology that a lot of solicitors use is that you're instructing your solicitor. So you need to know what you want the outcome to be, or at least not know, because we never know what the outcome is going to be, but you at least need to know, have an idea of what direction you would like this divorce process to go to. If you're dealing with a partner who's high conflict, then again, you need to take that into account when you choose your solicitor, because all of these things will impact the process. So these are the things that I think, these are even prior to actually working with your solicitor, that you need to go out there, get recommendations, speak to them, and see which one suits your situation best.
But a quick question, but how do you know this is going to be a high conflict divorce? So how, sometimes I had no idea how my divorce would unfold, that it would be really full of conflict. And I didn't know that. So what can we give? What advice do we have for our viewers? What direction to take?
One of the things that I find in my experience, and this is where I wish I'd had something like this, because I didn't have anyone in my close circle that had divorced in any time recently that I was aware of. And I didn't think of interviewing a solicitor. I didn't think of getting 2 or 3 different people and looking at, I would get 3 quotes for selling a house. I would get 3 quotes for painting a room. I didn't think of it like that, because I suppose the emotions in it were like, what do I do now? This sort of, almost freeze. What do I do now? What I did do, though, which I now look back, and I look back with hindsight to a lot of my decisions and think that was a really good decision. And actually, it didn't come from me, which is really interesting. A friend of mine said, I'd like to come with you. Would you like me to do that? And that was enormously powerful and helpful for me, because I was still in this, oh my God, right, this is really happening. I'm now at a solicitor, and very few people knew. And it was just like, and actually what that did was meant we could go for coffee and I could unpack it with somebody who had heard all the stuff that I didn't hear. Yes. Because as humans, you go into a doctor and they say, well, actually, it might be cancer. And that's all you hear nothing else. Yes. So it's a little bit like that. So what I found was the value of bringing somebody with you to an appointment to help you to make a good decision, for me, was like winning the lottery. Yes. And the other thing was, because this person had dealt with solicitors over different things, different circumstances over the years, she had an experience of working with solicitors, and we came out and her first words to me were, I wish I had had her a long time ago, because my experience with 2 or 3 different solicitors has been really different. And that gave me a perception of the person that I had just encountered with and met. What I felt for me, and what I think is important, is, it's very hard, I think, when you're in the middle of an emotional turmoil to know what you want. I think I look back to that stage in my life and I think I had no idea what I wanted, except that I wanted to not be married. So that was the only line I had. What else past that? I really didn't know. I didn't know how to gauge that. And when there's children involved, maybe it won't be a 50-50 split. How does that work out? There's so many things to consider. What I sensed when I came away from my solicitor was, this person will respect my values. This person isn't going to override me because they are, in the phrase that you would hear, is maybe a shark. I didn't want somebody to get me everything I could get, no matter what the cost. I wanted someone to represent me that would be in a way that I would want something to unfold, or in as much as control I have. I mean, we don't have control over everything. We can only control ourselves. But for me, it was, this person is going to listen to me. And if I say, please don't do that, we're going to discuss it, as opposed to somebody saying, no, this is what you have to do. And that was important to me. And that's that value system of being heard. Because in the middle of all of this, there's a lot of people who don't hear you because they don't know how to. And having a solicitor who you feel can hear you. And now when I look at what we do, being divorce coaches, I see the value of being able to help our clients to navigate this pathway, and what questions do you need to ask, and helping our clients to figure out what is it that they need, and then what do they need to know from a solicitor. I didn't have this, and that's why I'm doing this, because I thought, you know.
What comes to mind immediately is when you say, you know what, I wanted my solicitor to work with my values, and what I'm hearing is that you had a voice. And I think very often if you go into separation, you don't know your voice just yet. You could have been a codependent, and you don't know. A codependent means it's not about you. Your reference point is your environment, and you react to that. Yes. You're in reactive mode. And I recently spoke to a client of mine, and I just, in passing, dropped the word project management. And to her, it was such an eye-opening moment. It wasn't, I thought, you know what, it was so obvious. And I think sometimes to us, what is so obvious is so not obvious to others. So this is something that I find so important. What you're both saying, both to me seem like you already had a voice. By the time you connected with a lawyer, you kind of knew where you were standing and you were going. And I think to many, or to some divorcees, that is really difficult. They are very, maybe more passive, more in a reactive mode. And I think then under that circumstances, maybe the divorce coach then comes before approaching the solicitor in order to kind of get an idea, who am I, what do I want? But if you're already ready, you know what, if you're further into the emotional process, maybe you can go straight ahead to your divorce lawyer. Maybe you already know whether you want a win-win or you're expecting a win-lose separation. And then there are different ways of separating. So like a collaborative family law practice or mediation. Or
and I think, you know, when I said earlier that, you know, you need to have some idea of what you want the outcome to be, what I think I am trying to say is, like, when you speak to a solicitor, they will be able to tell you within reason what a realistic best case, worst case scenario are within the realms of the law. Because, you know, sometimes when you're in that heightened emotional state, you know, you just want things, and you're saying, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get this, and I want that, and I want this. And it's all about wants, because what you're really wanting to do is hit back at the other person that's hurt you. Are these realistic? Will they actually have any legal standing? You know, you could argue. I mean, I currently have a client whose partner is being incredibly unrealistic in regards to access to the child, does not want to share any holidays, says, you know, well, I'm gonna have them on all holidays, on all special occasions. That's not realistic. It's never going to get signed off by a judge, and you can spend a year, 2 years fighting over this, you know, this point, only to realize that actually if it went in front of a judge, the judge would provide a fair to both, you know, a fair outcome to both parties. So it's about looking at what are you actually looking to, you know, what are your the things that are really important to you, and what are the things that you're willing to negotiate on? Because and then all of that needs to fit within the realms of the legal system within the country that you're working in. There'll be lots of things that we would want. You know, I wanted at the time, because I was so hurt, I wanted the whole house and to not pay my ex-husband anything because I didn't think he deserved it. Morally, yes, everybody agreed with me and said, you know what, you'd be right. Legally, that was never going to happen.
Yeah. Quickly say something about the 3 pillars. Do you want to just continue with what are the 3 pillars of divorce? When you say what is realistic in terms of what the divorce is about, the money and the kids, do you want to just name them?
Well, I mean, in the UK, you know, everything will start at 50-50. And then there's a negotiation process that goes on between either party. And, you know, whether you do that through mediation or whether, you know, you choose to sort of, you know, go through the courts, everything is expected that we're going to start at the point where we're going to split the financial assets and the childcare, everything 50-50, right? Now, that's not saying that that is going to be the final outcome, because obviously there's going to be a period of discussion, negotiations in between. But we have to, if we start the divorce process saying, well, I'm not going to give her anything, I'm not going to give him anything, I'm not going to let him see the kids, and all of these things that we're thinking, and these are the things that I sometimes hear clients saying because they're angry and they're upset, and they're in that place where they just want to lash out, really. And then you have to say to them, okay, no, I get that, I know that's how you're feeling, but this is only going to make the process of divorce far more painful than it needs to be, because you need to be realistic, and ultimately we need to work within the legal process. And that's where the solicitor comes in. The solicitor will be able to tell you, yes, that is possible, we can negotiate on that, or the solicitor will tell you, well, no, actually, that's absolutely not happening.
Yeah, I had a friend who said to me, and it was probably the wisest bit of information I had, which was the legal system is the legal system, and that doesn't make it fair. It just makes it the legal system. And unfairness is part of this, and it's part of it for both parties. I think there is an unfairness because everybody's going to have a sense of that. When we're talking about the solicitors and just all of this, the unfairness and the resistance to want to go to where you think is unfair creates difficulty in making decisions. And in that case, then you might want to go back and recheck something with your solicitor. It's a very good idea to ask your solicitor about. It wasn't something that I necessarily did, and it was something then that I was thinking, oh gosh, can I go back and is it going to cost more if I email or if I have a phone call? So actually, one of the good questions to ask your solicitor is, what is their pricing structure? Some solicitors charge every 6 minutes. So how much information can you get into a 6-minute window? Some solicitors will charge per hour. Some will charge for a package with divorce, and they'll give you different things. That information will dial down fear within you because you have a known. We may not like the known, but when we have a known, we can cope better with it because we have a benchmark. As you were talking about, we have a reference point, Simone. So when you're talking to solicitors, this would be something I would be highly encouraging clients to find out is, what is the pricing structure for me to contact you about different things? And that's where we as divorce coaches come in, is helping people to understand how to make a good decision so that second guessing it and going backwards and forwards doesn't happen, or maybe not happen as much.
I'm now advising you to get your pen and your paper ready. I have a couple of questions that I would like you to take down. So this is, when you're ready to approach 2 or 3, what Sama recommended, lawyers, what questions should you?
Can I just quickly, just adding on to what Claire said, what's really important in that aspect is, like you said, that 6-minute window or that 15-minute window. Prepare yourself for that conversation. Your solicitor, if you spend 15 minutes telling her the moral aspect, the emotional aspect, she's charging you for that 15 minutes. But none of that can be taken into account in the advice that she gives you. She can only give you, she or he, I say she because my solicitor was a lovely she or he can only give you advice based on the legal recommendations. So that you need to really understand that if you spend 15-20 minutes telling your solicitor how your partner has upset you, distressed you, hurt you, yes, they will listen to you because that's part and parcel of being in family law. However, they're charging you for that time and they cannot take it into account with the advice that they give you.
Okay. Shall we then just do the questions, and then because we're already 5 minutes towards the end, I think, and then after that we quickly bring our experiences. Now, once you're working with the lawyer, with the solicitor, what do you need to be aware of? Okay, here we go. I think it's important sometimes to want to know, how long have you been practicing law? You know what? Sometimes you want to know. Lots of solicitors have different topics. Not every family solicitor is doing family law solely, right? They do different types of laws. We want to know, what is the core of your law? Maybe it is important to you. And then we have the fee, of course. What is the rate? And then maybe we can just ask, if you see me going over and I'm so much talking about which is not of your expertise, please remind me to, go back and focus. And then, will other people work on my cases? And what's their profession? It could be the assistant, it could be another lawyer. I love the one when you said, what's the realistic outcome, and start at 50-50. I love that to begin with. What is the retainer amount, and is it refundable if I change my mind and go to someone else, right? There is a retainer that you pay at the beginning. What is the timeline in your personal opinion on my case? You know what they will ask you is basically they just have an anamnese, and then they say, okay, well, what do you think, how long it's going to take? What are other charges? Could be copies, phone calls, traveling, right? Depending on where you choose your solicitor. It could be that the court is somewhere else and then they need to go back and forth. Could you please, and I think that's the beginning, describe a typical divorce procedure? What do you expect of me? Right? And I think very often the solicitor does not brief the client, you know what, this is your homework. This is what you need to bring to the table for me to be the most efficient as you want me to be. And then this is kind of how you understand how they work, you know what, in terms of who you choose. What's the percentage of your divorce cases settle amicably versus acrimoniously? That's when you see where that, because some very, you know what, very, very deliberately choose to go into the more acronomia.
Oh no, oh, you got me confused now.
Acrimonious. Yes.
Yes, I'm staying out of that one.
So then you get a sense what their attitude towards separation and divorce is. And then very often some people are incredibly impatient. Ask them, when can I expect you to return to my phone call or email? For some people, it's so difficult to be patient. I mean, they're working on other cases. You know what? If you feel I just need very close hand holding, then you need to ask the divorce lawyer that, because maybe he says that, or she, that's not me. And then that can cause a lot of emotional unrest within you because you feel so lost. And how do you prefer to communicate? You know what, do I call, do I text, all that. And I think if at all, when would you know when to choose a combative lawyer? I think it's important, at what point does the lawyer then also say, I think we need to change the strategy, the direction. We have tried win-win. Obviously, we go in trying to make it as less acrimonious as possible. But at what point do you think now we need to change the direction, right? Instead of just you making or increasing the costs, which doesn't matter to the lawyer, but it matters to your budget. So, you know what, ask them fairly. You know what, when does it switch?
Yeah, and lots of solicitors will, so parts of the process where it doesn't necessarily need to be the senior person that's working on your case. They can offload some of that work, definitely in my case. So my sort of primary solicitor, the lady that I dealt with, had a much higher hourly rate than the lady that was actually sending out a lot of the emails that didn't need any very specific information. So that was being charged at a slightly lower rate. So yes. It's sometimes, maybe that's another question that we can ask, that, is there that sort of setup where there may be certain parts of the process that can be offloaded to somebody that maybe charges a slightly lower rate, because that will sort of overall reduce your costs. I think another question which comes to mind is about, there's a lot of companies nowadays doing what they call a fixed price divorce. And it's, I think, so they carry out the process and there's a fixed price at the end. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that if that is the company or solicitor that you're signing up with, is to ask all of these questions, as in response times and, how will I communicate with you, but also what isn't included. So if there's a curveball which requires something completely different to be investigated, is that included in the fixed price divorce, or is it assumed that we're just talking about a very sort of, non-conflict sort of, we're just going through the paperwork and, so I think that's a really important question to ask if you do decide to go with the fixed price solicitors, because what if something changes? And I think from my perspective, and I know this can be an expensive alternative, if you're not happy with your solicitor, if you feel that you're not being heard, if you feel that it's not going in the direction that you need it to, you do have the option to change.
Yeah.
It's
I think that's really important, actually, because if you feel that your tension is rising, and the linchpin is your solicitor, a divorce is difficult enough without having that. And you would change a doctor, you would ask for a second opinion, but for some reason, I think the reason is because there's so much going on. With overwhelm is a word that a lot of people on a divorce journey would easily identify with, but actually being able to take a decision and go, this isn't working for me, so let me try something different. But at that stage, you have a lot more experience to ask different questions, because you know what's happened that's caused the negativity. And one of the things in my experience is that my solicitor was on maternity leave for a portion, and her stand-in didn't ask me before she did something. And one of the questions that I think that would be important, Simone, in that list of questions is, certainly from my aspect, is, can I ask you, are you willing to let me see and verify every document before it is forwarded to my partner? Because we live with the implications of somebody else receiving something that they think we have sent. If we haven't read it to be prepared ourselves, that can create an awful lot of stress.
And that should be standard good practice.
It should be, but it's not necessarily. So I think to ask that question means you have said that this is important. So that's just something that came to mind when we were talking about the different things from my experience that I didn't necessarily think needed to be asked, but actually it should have been.
That's a really important, because like you said, that can create further conflict between the two parties, which is completely separate.
And that's what happened.
Yeah. I think we're nearly at the end. To me, so before I wrap up, what would be something that I am bringing personally to this episode? You need to get organized. So the question about what do you expect me to do? I think for a lot of reasons, I think the divorce is one of the very, very few projects where we hand over so much power to one person, which is the lawyer and the solicitor. And you talking about, do you know, or you have the opportunity to switch the solicitor, but you then also have to ask yourself, have I instructed the solicitor enough? I think the solicitor can only run in whatever direction it has been briefed. Not in charge of your divorce. The solicitor is only as good as he or she is being instructed. So it could be, if you are unhappy, that he is actually very good, but she doesn't know in what direction to run, because you haven't been open enough, which brings me back to the beginning. To have a voice in what you want is crucial. If you want to split the pie, you need to know the definition of the pie. So get organized, have a professional support team.
Yes. And get all your, like they say, get your ducks in a row, get all the information that you need around your financials, around your assets, around children, etc. Because these are all questions that your solicitor will ask you in that meeting in order to give you an idea of what a potential settlement could look like. So if you turn up to this first meeting without having, my advice always is write it all down, because it is overwhelming, these first conversations that we have, and there'll be things that you're forgetting. But if you go there prepared, you've written everything down, you know what accounts you have, you know what assets you have, or at least have an idea. I'm not suggesting that we know everything at this point in time, but we need to have a pretty good idea of what it is that we are going to be negotiating on. And then, yes, you're going to have to go off and get all the information and get all the paperwork and the evidence, etc. But for you to make really good use of that first conversation that you have with solicitors, make sure you have as much information in front of you, so that even if the conversation does veer off in an emotional tangent, as it does, because it is an emotionally charged, overwhelming conversation, you can bring yourself back and look at your piece of paper and think, right, I need to add this and I need to add that, so that you can get some really, you can walk away from that 30-minute, 20-minute consultation with some idea as to where you stand.
Yeah. And I think my takeaway, understanding that getting your expectations in the right place is the key. So asking the questions to see if what you want is realistic. So when your expectations are in the right ballpark, the emotional journey on this with your solicitor will be less up and down. And when you have your expectations in the right place, if you expect to hear from someone within 2 days, ask them, is that realistic? Because if they say to you, it'll take up to 10 days, you can alter your expectations or you can change your solicitor, but you need the information to match the expectations you have, because unmet expectations are what create frustration, upset, and overwhelm. I would also say that if you come across some information that you think, oh, I think this needs to go in a different direction, be totally okay to say that to your solicitor. You're not there so that your solicitor tells you how this has to happen. As you're talking, Simone, you are there to instruct your solicitor. And if there's something that comes to light that you think this is a problem and I need this to change because I understand the dynamics in my relationship, and you have very good reason for that, your solicitor doesn't know that you're thinking that. So you have to be able to verbalize it. And that comes further down the line as you gain your emotional stability during the process. My big thing would be, if there's somebody that you trust, that can go with you to these appointments, especially initially, it will help you to feel that you have someone to help you to make a good decision. And that is a good thing for you to be able to do. And it's someone to talk to somebody about, because they have heard and they have seen and they have had their experience.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We wrap up. We're done. This one was a very factual episode. You might want to rewatch it and see and take the piece of information that speaks to you the most. So a wrap up is not really done in one sentence. I think in this one, you have to have a voice. If we talk about solicitor in the divorce case, you employ the solicitor, not the other way around. And if you're not there yet, have somebody, have a friend, have a divorce coach, have anybody who empowers you to be ready to take on that responsibility. It's a lot about responsibility, expectation. It's a negotiation. Good luck. You get there. Look at us fancy ladies. Keep rewatching the episodes on the way there if you need more information in how to navigate all the challenges along this path. At the end of the video, we'll have a takeaway. Yeah, I think good luck. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe. We are looking forward to seeing you again in the next episode. And goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen from Germany.
Goodbye.
Bye.